Welcome everybody to Red G Fox. All right, so today in episode breakdown, we're going to try something new. I'm going to try a much quicker format where we still break down a lot of stuff in the episode, but we try to speed things up so it's not so long and more enjoyable. We'll actually have clips in here as well, maybe even some clips where we talk about the top quotes. So let's get to it. Please comment below. Do you enjoy it this way more than the old way? Let me know. I always appreciate feedback. So today, we just got done meeting Rollo last week, which we know now the show's going to pick up. And now we come into the most kindest and great characters in show history, and that is Julio Fuentes. Vaya. In this one, the Puerto Ricans are coming. That's what it is. And summary, let's just get to it. Summary. It's all about basically Fred upset that the new neighbor who brought the old place where he had, been buying the junk up that trash people have been throwing away, cleaning it up and reselling it to them. He's going to lose that money. But now he's got a new guy who's a competitive businessman in the junk. But most importantly, he's a Puerto Rican. And we find out throughout the episode that Fred is actually kind of a bigot or prejudiced towards Puerto Ricans. And he has a history of a reason why. And he does not want this guy. So unjustly, he's going to not even give him a fair shake. But Julio is so nice, and we're going to find out, is Julio nice enough to overcome Fred's hardened heart towards Puerto Ricans? And that's the episode right there. That's what it is. So what we're going to do now is do top 5 moments. We're going to have the top quotes from the episode, familiar faces, and fun facts. We're going to try to teach you things you didn't know, including a couple crossword puzzles that were never answered in the show. We'll cover that later. So let's get right to our top moments in the show history. Number 1 coming in, and that is Bud Nipper. Melvin is sitting in there, and that's another side thing. This is sad. This is a fun fact right away off the bat. This is Melvin Slappy White's last episode. If you've ever been a fan of my channel, you know I have a huge love for Melvin. I think he is kind of like Bubba, but much more calmer. Seems a little more intelligent than Bubba. And he's just like Bubba in that they'll pick on him, but he's kind of, he won't fight back, but he'll just say, I'm out of here. But I love Melvin, and this is his last one. I forget at times that he was even in season 2, that he makes a brief appearance in this episode. I always thought season 1 he was done. But no, he is in this. This is his last one. And there's no final goodbye. That's what always sucks when you have a side character you don't know it's his last episode. You can actually go look up. I have a fun fact on Slappy White, and I explain in that why he left the show and what he went on to do. Better things, right? You can't blame him for what happens. We cover it in that. So him and Melvin are hanging out, and they're going over a crossword puzzle, and then you hear that noise. And in this scene, Fred's like, that's it. He's so sick of this. He gets up, and he's like, I'm going to tell him. And he starts yelling, hey, blah, blah, blah. He's yelling, and Melvin's like, who is that guy? And that's when Fred's like, he's some guy who bought the new home next door. And Melvin's like, people have been throwing their trash away there for years. And Fred's all, yeah, and I've been collecting it, cleaning it up, and reselling it to them. Oh, that's so funny. And he's shouting, and he's like, and then he closes it, and he's all, that's how you nip that thing in the bud. Right? He's done it. And then he hears it again, and Melvin's like, I don't think he heard you too well. And Fred's like, that's it. I'm getting me a bud nipper, and I'm going to nip this in the bud. He said bud nipper or bud like 6 or 7 times in this small little frame. It's hysterical. I love this scene. They actually show promo cuts when they used to promote Sanford and Son on certain channels. They would show this where Fred would be like, that bud is nipped. And so he says he's going to get his bud nipper and nip this thing in the bud. And Melvin, rightfully so, is like, hey, Fred, what's a bud nipper? And he's all, I'll show you what a bud nipper is. And then he whips out the big bat. He's all, this is my bud nipper. And Melvin's like, well, what are all those things in it? He's all, that's me nipping some buds. So he's about to do that, and he walks over, and thank God Lamont comes in, because Fred could have been in some trouble. You got to give it to Fred. He's never scared of it. But Lamont walks in and stops the whole situation from escalating. That is basically the top, as we break down the top 5 scenes, that is the first opening one, and it is hysterical. Now we get to the point number 2, the number 2 scene. And it's right after. It's Lamont, Melvin, and Bubba discussing as Fred tells Lamont, Lamont tells Fred, I went over there. I met the guy. Don't do it. I had food with them. Mofongo. And Fred's like, if Mofongo, what the heck is Mofongo? He said, if I would have had Mofongo, I'd put some foot powder on it. Foot powder on it. And that's when he tells him, oh, he's Puerto Rican. And Fred's like, there it goes. There goes the neighborhood, and they start discussing about, he said, that's who destroyed Harlem. Harlem, he goes, Harlem was a paradise until these Puerto Ricans came over there. And Melvin's like, yeah, man, it was a paradise. And Lamont tells him, and the conversation is so good between the three. And he's like, you know well enough, Melvin, that Harlem was a ghetto well before the Puerto Ricans came. And Melvin is so nice. Like I said, he's agreeable. He's like, yeah, I can't argue with that. And Fred's like, yeah, but it was beautiful. And he goes, it was, Melvin's always beautiful. How could a ghetto be beautiful, Melvin? That's one of my favorite quotes when he's all, how can and then he looks at Fred, how can a ghetto be beautiful, Fred? And Fred tells him how they brought over the cockroaches. And then they brought over the rats. And they even had some of the cockroaches as pets. Man, the whole scene is so hysterical. It's probably number 2, my favorite on this whole episode. Just in the fact that I personally love Melvin. And like I said, it's the last time I'm going to see Melvin in show history. I think they have a great exchange, all 3 of them. How they're discussing. That's one thing that I really liked in the past, is that when Melvin, Lamont, and Fred were together, you had great just chemistry, feeling each other, conversations, playing off each other. It was excellent. So this is them at one of the best that I've seen since the Barracuda episode at the end. But they're talking, and then finally he's like, you know what? And they both said, shut up, Melvin, because Melvin's going back and forth playing both sides of the fence. And Lamont's like, yeah, will you just shut up, Melvin? And classic Melvin's like, all right. He said, you know what? If you don't want my opinion, I'll just shut up. Then he gets up to leave for the last time, and he's like, all right, I'm out of here. And a top quote, I love this quote, is when Fred's like, hey, Melvin.
Leave the door. The flies ain't been out all day.
Oh, it's so funny. So he takes off, and that's basically the end of Act 2, or the best scene as we break it down, the number 2 scene in this. Now we get to the number 3 scene, and that is both times he meets Julio. So as he's getting there, Fred and Lamont go in the kitchen, share a couple words, talking about the whole situation. And as Fred comes out, he sees Chico, and he's like, oh man, he's losing it. There's a goat in my house, and Lamont comes out, and he's like, will you relax? That's just Chico. And he tries to calm him down, and Julio comes in. The number 3, if you break it down, best moments of this is both meetings with Julio. When Julio first comes in, he's speaking to him in Spanish, and he's like, oh, he doesn't, I'm sorry. And Fred's like, oh, look, they both understand the same language. And he talks to him, and Julio gets up, and he's like wiping his hands. He's like, oh, nice to meet you. And Fred's like, before that though, remember Fred had said I know Spanish. And he's like, no hablo español. Si amigo. And then he even says, I know some cuss words too. And as he tells him right there, he goes, I ain't gonna shake no hands, no goat lover. And he's like, and he's so kind. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm a new guy. How it's nice to meet you. I'm trying to get everything cleaned up. I'm sorry about Chico, stay there. And Fred's like, next year, he'll be having, he said, don't you have any dogs? Or is that a Puerto Rican poodle? And he goes, oh no, he keeps the yard nice and clean. Then Fred tells him he's like, next thing you know, you'll be having chickens all over the yard, over the place. Because, Fred doesn't want it to get out of control, as we understand. And that's when Julio's like, oh, you got a problem with chickens? And he's like, nope. He's like, you got a problem with goats? He's all, nope. He's all, maybe you have a problem with Puerto Ricans? Now you got it. It's so well, the chemistry between the two. And it's so believable. And then Fred, they just break it down into why he doesn't like the Puerto Ricans, how they ruined everything, and you brought the cockroaches, and now you got the goat. Look what you got this time, right? Fred even says that. He's like, look what you brought with you this time. And he's like, nah, you give up. And rightfully so. Julio has been very kind, and he doesn't want to get in a fight. He just met Fred. And he's like, no, you give up bad vibes. And he even has a shirt later, remember? In I think season 3 or 4, he has a shirt that says good vibes. So I love that. That actually stays with Julio's character. But he's like, no, I'm out of here. And as he's about to leave, he's like, you go back where you came from. And he's like, I come from New York City. And they start going back and forth. And he's like, he's not going to take it. And he leaves. And Fred's like, I wish, he's ready to fight him. And the next time they come back, before that, Lamont's about to say, this is still all part of Act 3. And Lamont, because Fred says he's calling the police. And we'll get to the top quotes, but this is one of the top quotes in there. As he says it, I'll just say it now. As he sits there and he's about to tell him, he goes, I'm calling the police. And he said, you can say goodbye to your Marx brothers, Julio, Chico, and Mafungo. And Lamont's so ticked at Fred for calling the police. So as he's sitting there, remember I talked about the crossword puzzle. The next day, Fred's trying to do crossword puzzle, and he's asking about, what's the name for a six-letter word for, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. And Lamont says fink. And he's like, no, that's just 4. And they break it down about why he's calling the police. And Fred says he cares about his community. It's illegal to have a goat. Then Julio comes. And Julio comes in and Fred slams the door. He doesn't want to see him. And he tells Lamont come out. He's like, nah. He said, you know what? And he even does this. He's like, you know what? I realize I come over here. I'm playing my loud music. I'm disturbing you. I don't even introduce myself. I feel so bad. And he said, I really want us to be friends. So I brought over a present. And it's wrapped like it could be, who knows, cocaine? You don't know what it is. And he's like, it's wrapped. And Fred's all, we don't smoke that around here. And he's like, no, my friend, it is cheese, goat cheese. And he's like, well, put it back in your goat. I don't want it. And he's like, no, you can eat stuff, do stuff with it, make it with different things. And he's like, no, put it back in your goat. And now that just shows how far Fred is in being prejudiced and angry towards this person who's done nothing but nice things to him, that he just has it in for him. And we see that a lot, right, with Fred, where before he even gets a chance to give the person a chance, like Rodney, his brother-in-law, that he's already making judgments beforehand. And Julio is pissed. And you don't refuse a gift to someone who's trying to be nice. Worst case scenario, you say, hey, thank you. I probably won't use it, but I'll keep it. Thank you. I appreciate the gesture. We ain't seeing that from Fred, and that's what we love about him, because he's being honest, right? And that's something that's so refreshing. He's just being himself. Whether he's right or wrong, he's at least being honest. He's not two-faced. And Fred's like, nah. And then that's when he's like, I come over here, I try to be nice, and they have the huge exchange. And another top 5 quote when he's like, you're a sangano. You're a sangano. You are a big dummy. And the way he says it, and Fred's like, who you calling sangano? And they go back and forth. And the chemistry, the fighting, it's so realistic. And once again, Julio's like trying to be calm, but he loses it, rightfully so. And Fred's like, you say sangano one more time. You say it. And he's trying to fight. He's ready to go. And he's all, say it again. Say it again. Say it again. Julio keeps going, sangano, sangano, sangano. And then he takes off. He goes outside and he's gone. And Lamont's like, you know what? You're ridiculous. This man comes over, you refuse a gift, and he chastises his dad as he should. Even though if you were in Africa right now, I'd knock you out. We'll get to that when Lamont goes African. Oh, I can't wait for that one. But anyways, Fred gets kind of disciplined. Not disciplined, but talked down to by Lamont, because Lamont is right. And then the one guy, the safety inspector, comes. And so that's it with Act 3, where they both meetings with Julio. We covered both the first time and the second time. Julio is the nicer guy, and it's got great comedy, but it's also great acting, and it shows the friction between the two and why, and how even basing it without facts, just by stereotypes, can be dangerous. And that's what Fred's doing right here. He's using his past experiences without even giving Julio a chance. Now the next one is Fred, when Fred had made the phone call, and he's gonna get the city inspector. The city inspector comes to meet him, and he comes in and he's like, what's your complaint? Fred's like, I don't want to live next door to him. I don't like him. He's like, that's not something I can really do. He said, all right, his building is an eyesore to the community. And the guy's like, looking around, he's like, yeah, I can see why that's a concern. Basically, yeah, Fred, you're not much better. As Lamont had pointed out earlier, Lamont had even said, how are we going to be saying we're caring about the community and what's an eyesore when look at our place? We're not some kind of Beverly Hills Hilton. And so he goes, all right, thank you, Mr. Sanford. It's so good to have people like you who are looking out for our community, trying to make it better. And Fred's all proud of himself, And so he goes over there, and as they're arguing, they go outside, and Lamont wants nothing to do with it. He's upset at his dad. And he even said, look, we don't need another junk man here. That's all it's got to do with it. It has nothing to do with stereotypes, prejudice, which we know is not true. But he's like, because he was upset at Julio before he even found out he was a junk man. But he's like, no, it's got nothing to do with that. I just want the better, I want our rival out of here and better for our community. And then Julio comes running up, and Julio's like, hey, Lamont, man, look what I got. The building inspector. Check this out. And Lamont's like, oh, he already apologized multiple times to Julio for his dad's actions. Now he's like, hey, I apologize, Julio, I know. And he's like, no, man, I'm excited. He said, Mr. Sanford, thank you. He told me you sent him over there. He said, and it's a citation, but a positive one. It's something good. And then he reads it, and he's like, and then I love when Lamont's reading it, Julio, the way he's standing there, he's like, it's one of my favorite pictures, because you got Fred, who's looking at him kind of angry and like pissed, and Julio's smiling, going, hey, what you meant for evil turned out to be good. But he didn't know that. He's just thinking, hey, maybe Fred sent him over there. So it's kind of like Julio thinks Fred's maybe doing him a favor at this stage, because Julio's always looking in the positive, which is the opposite of Fred. So he's reading it, and everything's great. And then Fred's like, yeah, and he's like, hey, and he even gave me one for you, Mr. Sanford. It's what they say, it's true. Good neighbors come in all colors, so he's excited, man. We're going to be good friends, good neighbors. I'm looking good, you're looking good. And then Fred doesn't have his glasses, yet he can remember in season 1, he's reading pork and beans, he's reading all the things on labels, but now he can't see without his glasses, so they contradict themselves there. But he takes it to Lamont, he's like, hey, read it, Lamont, read it. He's so excited. And Lamont's like, dear Mr. Sanford, and he's like, you will be fined if you don't fix this and that, nuisance, trash, extra litter, fire hazard to your house. All these things. And Julio, poor guy, he's just sitting in the back. I'm like, I didn't expect that to happen. And then Fred's like, this is ridiculous. Man, this is perfect. There ain't no fire hazard. There's nothing wrong. And he slams the door and the whole thing caves in. So, and you can see exposed wiring. All the things that say are true. So once again, just like when later on we'll see Fred try to set boundaries on whose property line, it backfires. This backfired as well. What Fred meant for evil turned out to be good for Julio. And Lamont's even excited. He's like, hey, let's read this again. And they go through it. So it looks great. Like, hey, you know what? In the end, positive for Julio, regardless of what Fred did. And let's get to the number 5 best scene as we did the scenes breakdown. We get to it. It's one of my all-time favorites. I just did this. Go watch our previous episode where we did five reasons, scenes I'm thankful for in Sanford and Son. This was my number 3. And it's just the fact that you see this is so rare in Sanford and Son the rest of the time with Julio and Fred. And that is where they actually show a hint of friendship. So as he comes in, Fred's like, here we go again. You know, with Lamont, it's for you. He's like, no, Mr. Sanford, I'm here for you. And he makes his favorite food. And what is it on there? He even says, he goes, what is it? He's like, I don't want none of my mofongo stuff. And he's like, nah, it's not mofongo. It's spare ribs, candy sweet potatoes, and mustard greens. And he's so excited. And Fred's like, what? And he's all, just look at that. And he looks and he's all, He's like, oh, wow. And you can see it. And I love the change. That Fred's like, hey, man, this is a guy I had wrongly based just on where he lived or what his nationality was, what he came from, that's how he was. And I had no idea that he knew how to make soul food. So he's like, and he came over and made it for me. This isn't easy. You know, Julio's not rich. He made this stuff. And he goes over to him and he tells him, and then he's like, hey, look at it, Lamont. And Lamont's like, yeah, hey, man. And he's like, how'd you make soul food? He's like, oh, when I lived in Harlem. And and I love, this is one of my all-time favorite quotes from this episode, besides them saying, hey, amigos, amigos, and they do the handshake. And when Fred goes, you know, Julio.
All the Puerto Ricans was like you, Harlem would be a paradise.
It is so funny. Great way. And then Chico comes out and starts digging in the plate. So it's a funny ending, a great ending. It's one of the few and only times you see Fred and Julio like compadres, amigos, like they say. So that's it with the Puerto Ricans are coming. Top 5 scenes. Let's get right to it. Familiar faces. Gregory Sierra. I have already done a whole episode on him. Go look that up on Fun Fact Friday. But Julio, he was also in other episodes of Sanford and Son a lot. He was in Barney Miller. He played 6 different characters in one of my favorite shows, Murder, She Wrote. He also was in MacGyver 3 different times. And he was in Miami Vice. He was the original chief detective, but he left. He didn't like living in Florida. I mentioned that on the thing. So he dropped out of Miami Vice, or he could have been on there big time and even better. And he's also in something called Something Is Out There, where he appeared in 8 episodes. Gregory's here. We also got Larry J. Blake. He was Mr. Watkins, the building inspector. He appeared in 8 different episodes of Here's Lucy, the FBI 3 episodes, and the hit show Kung Fu. He appeared in 2 episodes as reoccurring character. That is it with our familiar faces. We already know Slappy White. Let's get to the top quotes, as we said. Number 1, when Lamont said, how would you feel if the guy next door turned from the people of Africa? And Fred said, I don't care as long as he doesn't turn from the people of St. Louis. Because Fred's always saying, look, I'm not from Africa. My family members aren't from Africa. I'm from St. Louis, and that's what he's based it on, not Africa. Another great one is when Julio says, you Sangano. He's like, you're a Sangano. You're a big dummy. The way he says it is just hysterical, and I love that line. And then one of my other favorite quotes from this is when he says, you could say adios to your Puerto Rican Marx brothers, Julio, Chico, and Mofongo. Top lines from that. Let's get to our fun facts real quick as well. This is the last episode ever of Melvin Slappy White. I mentioned that. Very sad, because I love Melvin. So thankful for all the time there, and this was a good final episode. Also, Fred asked a question about the crossword puzzle on a TV show starring William Conrad, and the answer is canon. That's the 6-letter word with William Conrad, canon. The other crossword puzzle earlier in the episode when he was asking about Della from Perry Mason, when he was talking with Melvin, the answer was street when he was talking with Melvin. So those were the 2 answers. That is it on Fun Facts. That is it on the episode. Comment below if you like this. Do you like how I list top 5 scenarios and then we break it down, show clips and all that stuff? Or do you like the old way where I'm there for 25 minutes talking about the entire episode with fun facts as well? The fun facts, familiar faces are always staying. Have a great week. Stay safe. And look for another clip coming up this soon before Friday. Who knows what we'll do Friday, fun facts or anything else. Thanks for watching, guys. Give a like and subscribe. Talk to you later. Peace.